Welcome back. Welcome back. Well, this year has seen revolutions all over the world, notably across Arab countries. But what about a revolution in business, inspired by the cataclysmic events of this year and the ongoing global financial crisis? Richard Branson has developed a new way of doing business, ensuring that it's a force for good. In his new book, Screw Business as Usual, Richard advocates a new form of capitalism, Capitalism 24902, which he insists will turn business as we know it upside down. Well, Richard joins me now to tell us about that and other things besides. Richard, great to see you again. You said here the secret of success, one of your quotes, is finding good people. Is that what you feel about the secret of success?
100%. I think all the business is a group of people, and you know, if you have a wonderful group of people 100% believing in what you're doing, completely committed, I think you can achieve pretty well anything. If you lose the trust of your people, then you'll lose your business. You don't deserve to exist.
And you also said just recently that while you admired Steve Jobs in a sense, at the same time he was completely different to you. He used to shout at employees in a way that you wouldn't have done. In fact, he broke all the rules that you believed in, really. And so very different people, and they both did pretty well.
I have enormous respect for what he's achieved, and he achieved it perhaps in spite of himself. I mean, you know, he was not a good delegator. He would cling on to all the minutiae. You know, even the tiniest little bit on an advert he would oversee, and yet it worked for him. And Apple, you know, is, I suspect, the most successful brand in the world. So it's just it's a different way of doing things. My own way has been to find good people, to delegate, to not to try to second guess them, and to leave them to get on with it. And that's enabled me to go on and do new things. And I suspect that's why, you know, he really had one very focused business, and you know, Virgin is more a way of life brand. We've gone into quite a lot of different areas.
And one other quote of yours, out of the new book, in fact, Richard Branson's Screw Business as Usual. What is the punctuation of that? Screw, business as usual, or screw business as you? What does it really? What do you want it to mean?
Well, I wanted to say exactly what it hopefully says on the cover, and that is that business as usual, which really has been for many generations, you know, let's just worry about the shareholders and the bottom line. We should turn over a new page, and what we should be doing as business leaders is getting out there and helping governments and social community solve the world's problems. You know, as business leaders, we are entrepreneurial, and I think we're capable of looking at problems perhaps more different in a different way than politicians and social workers.
And you're saying this very often, that doing good is good business, whereas a lot of people think doing good's a disaster financially and so on. But you say doing good is good business, yeah?
Yes, I mean, I think that if you are an employee working for a company that is out there making a difference in the world, you're going to work that much harder. But equally, you know, if you're a company that, you know, say, if you're an airline and you decide to, you know, use your profits to try to go and find clean fuels, and by discovering clean fuels, you can, you know, power your planes on clean fuels. You then, your staff will be proud of the fact that you're a clean airline, not a dirty airline, and you'll actually maybe be able to drive the price of tickets down because, you know, because you've now finally got a competitor to jet fuel. There is such an airline that's about to exist, and that's called Virgin Atlantic. And you know, and so you know, by investing our profits into clean fuels, I think that, you know, there's a win-win all round.
Because you said also Capitalism 24902 is a new approach to business, whereby we're taking care of the people and the planet, the very core of all businesses everywhere in the world, all 24,902 circumferential miles of it. That's the actual size of the world.
Yes, I mean, I think that that's the aim, and that of screw business as usual, and to try to get companies all over the world to make an effort to put some of their energies into sorting out the world's problems. And we've set up quite a lot not-for-profit organisations. We set up an organisation called the Elders that goes into conflict regions and tries to tackle conflicts. We set up the Carbon War Room, which is a not-for-profit organisation to try to get 25 gigatons of carbon out of the Earth's atmosphere, and to work with industry, with the industries that put out a lot of carbon, in coming up with imaginative ways of getting carbon out. We're setting up a centre for disease control in Africa to try to get on top of the problems of diseases in Africa. And each of these organisations we run like a business, but the end motive is not profit. It's cutting down on diseases, or it's cutting down on carbon, or it's it's cutting down on conflicts. And for the people who work for Virgin, I think they're proud of the fact that the Virgin Unite, our foundation, does things like that.
And one of the big current ventures of Virgin, of course, is the new acquisition of Northern Rock. And for people who say on that, Richard, that, well, he paid 750 million or whatever, but it was worth 1.4, so he got a great deal, and therefore we, the taxpayers, got a bad deal. What's the response to
that? We paid the highest price by far of anybody bidding for the bank. We just managed to put the deal together. I mean, there was there weren't a lot of people willing to come into the banking, to buy a bank in this current marketplace, and the returns we would be looking at is a lot less than we would make, on a lot of other ventures that we might go into. Having said that, I think by putting the Virgin brand to it, by reversing Virgin Money into it, by having a trusted bank, which I think under the Virgin brand it will be, I think we can build a great competitor in the UK, and the banking world desperately needs more competitors. I mean, most of the banks in the UK are now run by government, or pretty well owned by government, and that's not the best way of running banks, and so we will come in and compete.
What about the current situation in Europe, Richard? I mean, who do you blame for the mess?
Banks overspent and governments overspent, and together they have put at risk hundreds of millions of people. Hopefully they will have learnt from that, and they will tighten their belts, and hopefully we can make sure it never happens again, and that hopefully the countries will learn from this, and I think they've learnt a big lesson.
So you think that the euro can survive, will survive? You're on the spot.
I'm an optimist, and I think it has to survive. I think the risks of letting countries go are just too great. So I think as countries we can afford to make sure that it survives, and I think we've just got to make sure it survives.
And what about up there in space? Where is Virgin Galactic at the moment? How close?
Extremely close now. We had a successful rocket test about 4 days ago. The spaceship is finished, the mothership's finished, the spaceport is finished. So this time next Christmas, I hope to have been up to space with my children, and the whole new space era should have started.
And what date will that be? When will the launch be, roughly?
I hope around about Christmas time next year.
Have you? That's fascinating. Have you been into space yourself?
I haven't. I've been up in our mothership, but haven't had the privilege of going up in the spaceship yet.
Yeah. And in terms of the future, we read in all the papers how much you've accumulated and earned and so on, more than 3 billion and all of that stuff. What does money mean to you? What does having that sort of money mean to you, Richard?
it simply gives one the freedom to, well, I suppose to make a difference and to do, to make good things, so I spend most of my time working now on creating not-for-profit organisations, and have a lot of fun doing that, and wish to continue to do that until I drop. So, and then occasionally we'll dive in on a business thing here or there as well.
But it's once again, it'll be a crisis once again this Christmas for your friends and family. What do they do? What do they give to the man who has everything?
Well, they're all coming to join me in giving my daughter's hand away, and their presence is all they need to give us this Christmas.
That's fantastic. Well, that will be obvious. I hope it's a wondrously happy day.
It will be a wonderfully happy day.
And Merry Christmas as well.
And to you, David.
It's been a bit of a landmark year for journalists everywhere, really. The Arab Spring, the Arab uprisings, mass protests in the face of government clampdowns on the free press forced a new way of reporting onto the media. And the revelations of illegal methods used by journalists here in the UK continues to reverberate down what used to be called Fleet Street before it moved. So, a good time for a new organisation to support so-called fair journalism across the world. And that's what the newly formed Journalism Foundation aims to do. It's backed by the money of Russian oligarch Alexander Lebedev and headed by the former editor of the independent newspaper, Simon Kellner, who's here right now. Welcome, welcome. What's the plan here?
The plan
is aimed for a global movement, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the plan is to create a foundation that promotes and supports and develops free and fair journalism anywhere in the world, but through projects that have a very positive outcome for the public.
So you promote fair journalism. Do you also attack unfair journalism?
Oh, of course, yes, of course.
It's both sides.
I mean, it's both. They're two sides of the same coin, really, David. Yeah. And of course, in some ways, as you pointed out, it's a very timely moment for this foundation to start. It's a moment when journalism, particularly here in Britain, is held in low esteem by the public. And what we're trying to promote is this idea that journalism can be, and I think nearly always is, a force for good.
Discuss seems like the phrase at the end of that. Nearly always a force for good. But well, sometimes, but you're going to be dealing with, like with this hacking scandal, that's in the UK, but there's other things around the world, and there's places where journalists are forced to be muzzled and so on and so forth. But what's the balance? Do you think 90% good guys?
Well, I think the role of journalism is a positive role. It's to monitor the centres of power. It's to hold governments to account. It's to hold business to scrutiny. It's to inform. It's to entertain. All these are very noble callings, and I would say 99.9% of the time around the world, that's what journalism does. Unfortunately, we're seeing in Britain, and we're seeing many headlines here in Britain about practices that obviously are not only bad practice in terms of journalism, but they're illegal.
And then, in addition to that, there's a number of countries where the press is not free, for instance. I mean, we're being watched now by 130 countries at the moment. Now, what's the percentage of countries around the world who've got a free press and who hasn't got it, in fact, who's got it so badly not got it that they may not even be aware they haven't got it?
Well, exactly. And there's another category I would put in that, is that countries who never had a free press and now suddenly, with an emerging democracy, are learning how to operate within a free press setup. And one of the projects that we're launching with actually is the first really practical training courses for journalists in Tunisia, journalists who've never really known how to operate within a free press. And we're setting it with City University of London, very respected journalism department. We're setting up these really practical courses which involve everything from how do you print newspapers to how do you report free and fair fairly on politics. And we've been greatly encouraged by the reception that we've had in Tunisia, and we're hoping that that's a model that we can expand into other places. But your initial proposition is absolutely right. There is still, the answer to your question is, there are too many countries where there isn't a free press.
Hey, great to have you with us, Simon. Thank
Lovely
you for
to be
being
here.
here.
Lovely to see you again, David.
And now, for a 30-year-old, my next guest is accomplished. He's accomplished quite a record, in fact, starring in more than 70 films and making a seemingly effortless transformation from hairy hobbit to dancing penguin. Elijah Wood's the name. Elijah Wood is, of course, best known for his portrayal of Frodo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Alongside Robin Williams, who, of course, was with us last week, he's now one of the voices behind the animated penguins in the movie Happy Feet 2, which is now in your local cinema. I spoke to him during his visit to London. How many movies have you done? Is it over 70 now?
I don't actually know. I've lost count, to be honest with you.
That's amazing.
I don't know. I've been working for 22 years, I think. So.
Yes, so when was the first time you worked then? At the age of 8, by that?
8 years of age, correct, yeah. One of the first movies I did was Back to the Future 2. The first film that I did that I actually had a proper role was a movie called Avalon, which consequently, working on that film was the first time that I met Robin Williams.
Really?
Yeah, I was 8 years old. Robin was friends with Barry Levinson, the director, because Barry had directed Good Morning Vietnam. And it was nighttime, and I was outside, and this man came up to me and introduced himself and said, "Hello, I'm Robin," and I'm shaking his hand. I could barely see him, and I realized as I'm shaking his hand that it's Robin Williams. And I say, "Williams?" Freaking out. And he said, "Light goes on." And he was holding baby Zelda, who was only a year old at the time.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So you've known each other forever, is it?
Yeah, I guess so.
And so now, when did you decide, did you dream when you were 3 or 4 of becoming a movie star and one day meeting Robin Williams or whatever?
Not really. I was about 5 years of age. I had a lot of energy growing up. And I was about 5 when my mother saw a commercial on TV, and it kind of popped into her head that it might be something fun for me to do as a channel for my energy. And my brother, who was 7 years older than me, was already doing drama and plays in school. And so he already had a vested interest in it. And we basically just somehow, to make a long story short, I ended up going out to Los Angeles for a modeling and talent convention. And there were various agents and talent managers there. This manager asked me if I wanted to become an actor, and I was 7 at the time. And I said, yeah, that sounds fun. And I was enamored with being in Los Angeles. It was all a very new experience. And so we moved the family out, my brother, my mom, and I, just us, to California to try auditioning and to see what would happen. And within the first 6 weeks of auditioning, I got my first job in a Paula Abdul music video. And I loved it. I kind of loved it immediately. So it wasn't that thing of being 4 or 5 and seeing movies and thinking that's something I want to do. It kind of happened in a sort of organic way. But I was immediately in love with it. And I sort of immediately, once I started doing films, which happened later that year, I just had this sense of, I knew I had to play a character. I knew that that's what my responsibility was. And I kind of loved it. And the older that I got, the more actively passionate I became. The more movies I saw, the greater my knowledge became.
And most of the stories about Hollywood and child stars are sort of tragic stories in the end about broken lives and families breaking up and, and drugs and booze and all of that. Sure. I mean, did you have tragic pressures or did you escape them? It sounds as though you escaped them.
Totally. I did not have any of those things. I actually had an incredible home life. You know, all of that was preserved by way of my mother. I was raised by a mother whose main interest was that I turn out to be a good human being, not be a successful actor. If anything, she threatened to take me out of it if I behaved wrongly. She knew how much it meant to me, and I think she wanted to create, her greatest concern was that I had a strong sense of reality and a base at home that was separate, greatly separate from working as an actor, and it created a, you know, humility was drilled into me. I could never accept special treatment as a kid. And so as I became an adult, I just simply owned those things. I never had the temptations, I suppose, to kind of get into trouble.
Well, that's a very fortunate
Extremely fortunate.
Yes, and thank you, Mum, if Mum was responsible.
Yes,
and
indeed.
And then a part like this that comes along, what did you think about just doing the voiceover? Well, did you think that's more difficult? That's easy? You don't have to put on makeup for that? That's great, or what?
Well, the time commitment's less.
Yeah.
That's attractive and kind of fun. I also love animation. I do enjoy animated films. I always have. I love Pixar films. And I love George Miller. I loved his films. I loved what he was trying to do with a photorealistic animation style, with song and dance included in the film. I was just intrigued. And so the opportunity to play a voice, to have an experience that was unlike anything I'd done before was exciting as well. And I was also excited to work with Robin Williams.
Yeah, of course. And Happy Feet 2, is it deliberate that we get sort of melting ice caps and oil spills and impact of humans and so on? Is it also having an environmental point deliberately made, or would George Miller be amazed if I said that?
I don't think he would be amazed or surprised if you said that. I think it's, according to George, it's as deliberate as just simply what is actually genuinely happening, you know. And I think it's important to George, as it's important to us, that, you know, if you can include those things within the context of a film that feel that they're naturally a part of the fabric of the storytelling, but yet they're realities that people can walk away thinking about, and it can make an impression on people, I think it can be an important thing to do.
Absolutely. And then you're going back to Hobbits and Shades of Lord of the Rings and Peter Jackson, and so that's going to have taken up several years of your young life, one way and another. New Zealand and hit movies from New Zealand.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually just got back. I was there for about a month, and I got to reprise my role as Frodo, catch up with a lot of old friends. Many of the same crew are working on it who had worked on The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it was an amazing opportunity to go back. I mean, 4 years of my life had been spent working on those films, so in some ways it kind of felt like a massive family reunion for me. And New Zealand still feels like a second home. A large part of my growth into a man occurred there.
Australians always say New Zealand is 2 hours ahead and 50 years behind, but that's...
Australians would.
Yeah, they're slightly biased about the subject, of course.
Indeed.
Yeah. Hey, good luck with everything you're doing, and
Thank
we look
you so
forward
much.
to seeing the next sequence of films.
Cheers.
There are more great hits.
Thank you very much.
Very good to talk.
Indeed.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's all, I'm afraid, that we've got time for this week. My thanks to all my guests as ever. Next week, Doesn't Time Fly, is our last programme of 2011, and in a special programme, amongst other things, we'll be reviewing the year. So I hope you can join me then, join us all then. 7 days' time. Until then, goodbye for now.